She was walking home. No crime, no trouble, just a woman in her own neighborhood. But in seconds, her life changed forever. What happened next wasn't just about her. It exposed a harsh reality that still haunts us today. This is her story, and it's one America tried to forget. It was a quiet evening in Greenville, a small town where the streets seemed familiar but carried an invisible weight for some more than others. Danielle Carter, a 27-year-old single mother, had just finished her late shift at the diner on the corner of Main Street. Her apron still carried the faint smell of fried food, her feet ached from hours of standing, but her mind was on one thing: getting her baby daughter, Ava, home safely. With one arm, she held the car seat close, balancing a diaper bag over her shoulder as she walked toward her modest apartment just 3 blocks away. It wasn't much, but it was hers, a place she worked tirelessly to maintain. Danielle's life was defined by resilience. She had grown up in Greenville, one of the only black families in her neighborhood. Her father had worked at the local mill until it shut down, and her mother cleaned houses for families who rarely looked her in the eye. Danielle knew what it meant to struggle, but she also knew what it meant to push forward, to smile when the world expected her to fold. Ava was her reason, her heartbeat, her hope, her proof that despite everything, she could build a life worth living. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Danielle thought about nothing more than Ava's bath, a bottle, and a lullaby before bed. She hummed softly as she walked, a tune her mother once sang to her. The streets were quiet, save for the buzz of a street lamp and the distant bark of a dog. For a moment, it felt almost peaceful. Almost, because in Greenville, peace was fragile. As Danielle turned the corner, a pair of headlights cut through the dim street. A police cruiser slowed beside her, its engine humming low, its windows tinted. She didn't think much of it at first. Cops patrolled here all the time. But the car didn't pass. It crawled, matching her steps. Ava stirred in her car seat, whimpering softly, and Danielle adjusted her grip, quickening her pace. That was when the siren chirped, short, sharp, commanding. Danielle froze, her chest tightening. The cruiser's door creaked open, and a voice cut through the night. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to be turned inside out. The chirp of the siren had silenced everything. The hum of the streetlight, the rustle of leaves, even Danielle's own humming. She turned, clutching Ava's carrier tighter as 2 officers stepped out of the cruiser. Their flashlights flicked on, beams slicing through the dusk, landing squarely on her face. "Ma'am, stop right there," one of them barked. Though she hadn't moved, her heart drummed so loudly it drowned out Ava's soft whimper. Danielle's feet felt rooted, but her mind was racing. She had lived in Greenville long enough to know what those lights meant, what those tones carried. Not protection, not safety, authority, power, and for someone who looked like her, danger. She tried to steady her voice. "I'm just going home." It came out quieter than she intended. The officers exchanged a glance. One smirked, the other rested his hand near his belt. "We need to ask you a few questions." Questions. She had heard that word before. It rarely meant questions. It meant suspicion, an excuse, a prelude to something worse. Danielle shifted Ava's carrier in her hand, trying not to look nervous, trying not to make the wrong move. But what was the right move? The second officer circled, his flashlight grazing over Ava's sleeping face. "Out pretty late, huh?" His tone was casual, but the look in his eyes wasn't. Danielle swallowed hard, resisting the urge to back away. "I just finished work. My place is a block over, but explanations rarely mattered here." The silence that followed felt heavier than words. Then, without warning, one of the officers gave a sharp whistle. From the back of the cruiser, a low growl answered. Danielle's stomach dropped as a K-9 lunged forward, straining against its leash, teeth flashing in the beam of the flashlight. Ava woke with a scream, her tiny hands flailing in terror. Danielle's body locked between fight and flight, but neither felt possible. The officer holding the leash grinned, letting the dog inch closer. "Just procedure," he muttered, though Danielle knew better. This wasn't a procedure. This was intimidation. This was power, wielded because they could. Her breath came fast, her arms trembling as she held Ava close. The dog barked, the sound splitting the night, each snap of its jaws a reminder of how quickly this could spiral. Danielle's eyes darted to the windows of nearby houses, hoping anyone was watching. But the curtains stayed closed, the doors locked, the silence deafening. Fear turned to fire in her chest. She shouted, louder than she thought possible, "Get that dog away from my baby!" Her voice cracked, echoing off the empty street. For a split second, everything froze. The officers, the dog, even the night itself. And in that pause, Danielle realized something chilling. Survival wasn't guaranteed. Not here, not now. The dog froze mid-lunge, its handler yanking the leash back at the last second, not out of mercy, but out of calculation. The officers had realized, too late, that the eyes of the neighborhood were now upon them. What had been a private act of intimidation had spilled into public view, and every camera phone pointed in their direction was a silent threat they could no longer control. Danielle stood shaking, clutching her baby so tightly the child's sobs were muffled against her chest. Her legs felt like water, her voice cracked from shouting, yet she refused to collapse. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She had endured the worst of their cruelty, and though her body trembled, her spirit stood unshaken. The officers exchanged clipped words, trying to act casual, pretending the encounter was routine. "Just following procedure," one muttered loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. But their faces betrayed them. Tight jaws, darting eyes, unease in every glance. They knew the story had slipped from their hands. With a curt order, the dogs were pulled back into the vehicles. The flashing lights dimmed, the radios crackled, and one by one, the squad cars rolled away, their tires hissing against the pavement. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just the hollow sound of retreat, leaving Danielle standing alone in the glow of porch lights, the echo of her child's cries hanging in the night air. But silence does not erase memory, and what happened on that street did not stay hidden. Within hours, the videos taken by neighbors began to circulate. Online, Danielle's face, tear-streaked yet defiant, became a symbol of something far larger than one mother's terror. Strangers saw the way her baby clung to her, the way officers smirked as a dog lunged within inches of her child, and outrage spread like wildfire. News stations called it another example, as if the cruelty could ever be reduced to a statistic. Commentators debated procedure, legality, and authority, but for millions of people watching, none of that mattered. What they saw was simple. A black woman, unarmed and vulnerable, is facing the full force of a system designed to break her spirit. And yet, she did not break. For Danielle, the scars were invisible but heavy. She couldn't walk down her own street without feeling the echo of growls in her ears. Her daughter startled at sudden noises, her tiny body stiffening with fear. She was too young to understand. And at night, when the house was quiet, Danielle would replay the moment again and again. The snapping jaws, the mocking smiles, the realization that her life could have ended right there. But there was also something else that remained. Strength, defiance, a truth too powerful to be silenced. Because standing on that street, Danielle had not just fought for survival, she had forced the world to look, to see, to remember. And this is where the story reaches beyond one woman, one night, one set of flashing lights. Because Danielle's story is not rare, it is not an accident. It is part of a pattern, a chain of moments stretching back decades, centuries. Each name, each face, each headline is a reminder that racism does not always wear a hood or carry a whip. Sometimes it wears a badge. Sometimes it hides behind procedure. So what do we do with this story? Do we let it fade into the endless scroll of outrage, another clip shared, another headline forgotten? Or do we stop and ask ourselves, the question no one wants to answer, how many more mothers must stand trembling in the night? How many more children must cry in fear before we decide enough is enough? Danielle made it home that night. But home is not safety when the system that threatens you lives outside your door. Her survival was not an ending. It was a reminder. A reminder that survival should never have to be victory. Her story forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. Racism isn't just history. It isn't just someone else's story. It's now. It's here. It's happening in streets we know, in neighborhoods we pass every day. So ask yourself, when the next Danielle is forced to stand her ground, when the next phone captures the unthinkable, when the next child cries in terror, will we still call it another example? Or will we finally call it what it is?